While most of the iPhone 16 looks great, there's one part of it, a big part, that just doesn't add up to me. See, every time that Apple releases a new iPhone, they announce one flagship feature that stands above the rest as the main upgrade for that generation. And on the iPhone 16, it's crystal clear. It's Apple Intelligence and the trio of new AI features that Apple announced, including new writing tools, the ability to generate original images, and a smarter version of Siri that actually works. All of this sounded great until I went back and I actually rewatched the iPhone 16 event when my feelings started to very quickly change, because none of these features are actually ready now. The big feature for the iPhone 16 isn't gonna be there when you buy it. It's the first time this has ever happened on an iPhone, and while it doesn't sound like that big of a deal because they're coming soon, the story is way different than what Apple has alluded to. Historically, Apple's success in selling a lot of iPhones every year has been their ability to quickly deliver on exactly what they promised. And the formula is simple. Host an event for new iPhones, create hype around one big feature, and sell the phone to customers a week later. It's a tried and true strategy that has worked for the company for over a decade, except this time, Apple can't actually do that with the iPhone 16. Because on day one, a big part of what you paid for just isn't gonna be there at all. So when you buy the new iPhone this year, you're getting some of the new stuff, like the camera control button that does look cool and the significantly upgraded battery. But the one really cool and really interesting feature that Apple has been talking about nonstop for months is not going to be there when you get your phone in your hand. And inevitably, this is gonna cause some friction because you paid for something that you now have to wait for, and the ball is in Apple's court to deliver it. You can see where this gets kind of tricky. Of course, Apple says not to worry though, because Apple Intelligence is coming just a month later in October, and then you'll be able to use the new Genmoji feature and have Siri control your apps, and ChatGPT will also be integrated at a system level. Except not actually. See, when Apple Intelligence comes to iPhone 16 in October, only a few features of the larger set are going to be there. Confirmed for October are things like the new writing tools, smart notification summaries, AI photo cleanup, and the beautiful new look for Siri with the rainbow around the edges. But this is where things get murky, because the version of Siri launching in October is almost purely aesthetic. The actually smarter version that can perform actions inside of your apps, that understands your personal context, that actually works well and can answer all sorts of new questions. That version of Siri isn't coming until next year, in 2025. Pretty clever how Apple's releasing the new look before they had to actually figure out all the functionality. And according to reports, other big things like ChatGPT integration and the Genmoji image generation features aren't coming until 3 months from now, in December of this year at the earliest. All of this, by the way, has been confirmed by Apple. They have published the full list of features coming in the October update, and none of that big stuff is on the list. See how all of a sudden this next chapter for iPhone is starting to look like a preview of a chapter that you're gonna get one day in some capacity? And this is just the start. Now, with the iPhone 16 not releasing for a couple of days still, I love the new design, I like the new vertical cameras, and I wanted to see and feel what it actually looked like. So, I 3D printed one to get a taste of this phone early, and I did it thanks to the Bamboo Labs A1 combo that actually sponsored today's video. I printed this in less than an hour, and it completely changed my perspective on 3D printing, which I thought was really confusing and hard to set up, expensive, and ridiculously time-consuming. But the second I got the Bamboo Labs A1 in the mail, I could just tell this thing was different. The setup process from start to finish takes less than 30 minutes. It is incredibly easy to do, and there's a step-by-step guide to get you up and running immediately. Now, with this being a filament-based printer, which means it creates objects out of spools of material, there's a really cool accessory that comes in the box. It supports 4 of these different spools and can actually do multicolor prints, which typically you wouldn't see on a printer at this price point. It's a super premium feature, not costing you premium dollars. So with everything set up, I was ready for my first print. I did the iconic boat benchy design right here, which I think it did from start to finish in less than 20 minutes, which is ridiculously fast, and it turned out incredibly good and clean. Keep in mind, this was the first 3D print that I ever did in my entire life. And the reason this turned out so good is thanks to premium features like the active flow control and vibration compensation, because Bamboo Labs, like Apple, has designed their products to be user-friendly. I got comfortable so quickly, and that's how I ended up printing out the iPhone 16 design, which I can tell you, looking at the details of this model, is an incredibly good look that we're gonna have for the next year. I love the way it feels in the hand, and that vertical camera design it looks so good. I thought this was going to be a multi-day process just to learn my first print, and again, I did it on the first day, no issue. Okay, let me just say it. This has already cemented itself in my top 10 of the coolest things I've ever touched in my entire life. And right now, you can get one of these for yourself when you use my link down below. I've had so much fun with the Bamboo Labs A1, and I think you will too. So again, link down below in the description. A huge thank you to them for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it. But hey, maybe I'm blowing all this out of proportion. I mean, Apple is giving us some of the new AI features in October, and waiting a month, is it really that big of a deal? Well, Apple keeps acting like it's gonna be that simple. Like it's just another free software update for your iPhone. But that is simply not how the rollout of Apple Intelligence is actually going to work. And Apple said the same in less words. See, Apple Intelligence isn't comprised of normal software features like other things that Apple has announced early and released through a software update later. Something like portrait mode on the iPhone 7, where overnight they could just ship it out to every iPhone in the world. With Apple Intelligence, there's a lot of language involved. This is essential to pretty much every one of the new features. So Apple has to go through it and optimize all of these features individually for different languages and different regions that they want to support. Siri is a feature, for example, works in over 30 languages around the world. So regardless of where you buy the iPhone, you can use the feature like it's advertised. Apple Intelligence is launching with one language, US English. And according to Apple, if you don't have your device set to US English, you simply do not get Apple Intelligence in October. You'll have to wait until they add more languages, like they expand English localizations later in 2024, but no other languages besides English are supported this year. In 2025, Apple has simply said that they'll be adding support for a few others, including Chinese, French, Japanese, and Spanish. No specifics on when next year though, just sometime next year in 2025, more languages other than English. And somehow that's not even the kicker, because putting the language stuff to the side, if you live in the EU or China mainland, Apple Intelligence full stop just isn't available for you indefinitely. If you travel outside of those regions, Apple Intelligence will work on the phone that you own, but if you reside there, if you live in the EU or China mainland, you just don't get the new iPhone feature this year until Apple one day might add it. I mean, when has Apple ever on the iPhone made the main feature just not applicable to billions of potential customers? I can't overstate how big of a deal this feels. I don't know how it's going to play out long term because we're not there yet, but this feels like a pretty big deal to me. It's not like Apple hasn't been in this position before. Back in 2011 with the iPhone 4S and Siri, Apple was in a very similar circumstance where the hardware for the iPhone 4S was ready to ship in July on track, but the software and specifically the flagship Siri upgrade for that iPhone wasn't ready until much later in October. So rather than release the phones without the big feature in July, Apple just pushed the entire launch back until October of that year, when the phone launched as an entire package. So why did Apple release the iPhone 16 the way that they did this year? I think the answer is pretty simple. They needed to show investors that they had a new iPhone ready. As always, they did not want to shake confidence, and especially in a year where Apple has been seen as a bit behind in AI, they wanted to release the AI iPhones on track with how they release the new iPhone every year. Play it calm, cool, and collected. That's why to do this, they're really fragmenting the release of Apple Intelligence. They're spreading things out over what Apple has said is the course of the next year. I think the problem with that though is we get further and further into 2025, and some of these features that Apple showed off in June of 2024 are still not yet on a public-facing iPhone. At the end of the day, when everything else is said and done, people are gonna want what they paid for. And if some of these iPhone 16 features don't end up releasing until halfway through 2025, it's gonna end up feeling like an iPhone 17 feature that Apple sold us a year early. I bought one though, so I'll be on this journey with you to see when these features roll out, seeing how long it takes Apple to deliver on this full promise of AI iPhone. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this down below. Are you buying the iPhone because of Apple Intelligence? Is there another reason? Or are you skipping this year because, well, the story when you take away Apple Intelligence just isn't that interesting. Okay, that's all for this video. I've been Sam. Hope you're doing well. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.